If I sound funny, it's because I'm ill. So, hey, my last video did way better than I expected, being my first video in a long time to hit a 4-digit view count. So, hey, why not ride the high with another Sonic video? It's a franchise I love, and well, doing videos on it is clearly working out. I was originally going to end 2023 with a video on Five Nights at Freddy's, but the script got way longer than I wanted it to be, so I'm gonna hold off on that for now, but I guess that's just what happens when you talk about FNAF. So, I thought, what better next video to make about Sonic than one that would get people really angry at me? I assume. You see, I was going to title this video with Hot Take or Unpopular Opinion at the start, but I'm not actually sure how unpopular an opinion this is. This video was just me giving my opinion on a funny hedgehog who says the words damn and Maria a lot, and if you don't agree with what you're about to hear, that's totally fine. Humanity isn't some hive mind, and I'm not going to force you to comply with my opinion. So, Shadow the Hedgehog has been a hot topic of discussion in this fanbase for the past few years, and this, as far as I can tell, is mostly spurred on by the Metal Virus arc of the Sonic IDW comics, where when Sonic gives him genuine advice on how he can survive the Zombots, Shadow goes, "Yo, shut your damn mouth, Sonic, with your beta male ass advice. Your spine's a whack, your shoes a whack, your green eyes, oh you better believe they whack. I'm an alpha male gamer, Sonic, who mastered Call of Duty Zombies when I was still in the womb. These guys ain't anything, you hear me, you dumb blueberry looking ass?" Only to immediately then get infected by the Zombots and for his Zombot self to become the biggest inconvenience to the heroes in the damn plot. Now, I understand that Shadow is stupid overpowered and that Ian Flynn probably needed to write Shadow out of the plot because he could probably trivialize a lot of the problems in the Metal Virus arc, but like, damn man, this isn't Shadow, this sucks! And I know, it's not Ian's fault. It's Sega's fault because they came down with a lot of ground rules on what can and can't be done by third parties when it comes to Sonic media. The infamous Sega mandates. Honestly, looking through the Sega mandates, I think some of them make perfect sense as to why they'd want things to be that way. Some mandates ban the mentioning of any form of money existing. But the most infamous one is easily the rules about Shadow, and how he has to behave in certain ways, wishing to prove himself the strongest person in the world, and not really caring about anything beyond making sure the villains aren't breathing anymore. This seems to come from a fatal misunderstanding of why people like Shadow. Shadow is popular because he's a rough on the outside, soft on the inside type character. The main problem here is that they forgot the soft on the inside. Now, from what I understand, the mandates have loosened up as the IDW team have proven themselves to be worthy writers, but some things are very clearly set in stone. But with Shadow, how he acts in the Eggperial City arc, it seems to imply that maybe the writers have been given some more wiggle room with Shadow to make him a bit more reasonable. Shadow in more recent Sonic media, I think, is actually a solid compromise of the Shadow we had and the Shadow Sega now wants. Here we've got, for lack of a better word, a more tsundere Shadow. He's not outwardly emotional, and he's definitely not a people person, but he is willing to help, and his criticisms of Sonic's recklessness clearly come from a place of concern for the world's well-being. You know, wanting to protect the world? Like he promised he would for Maria? We've also seen this in Sonic Prime and Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog as well, but as far as I can tell, some people still aren't really happy with what we have here. A lot of people think we should have more from Shadow. Some things I've heard is that he should be hanging out with Team Dark more, he should be more friendlier to Sonic, and he doesn't really get any big character arcs anymore, and so on. Now, to address all of this, first of all, note that I named this video Shadow's current characterization is fine, and not Shadow's current characterization is perfect. Second of all, I'd like to look deeper into some of these points. Argument 1. He doesn't hang out with Team Dark enough. Yeah, you know what? Honestly, I do agree with this. I wish he was around Team Dark a bit more. Like, don't get me wrong, he fights alongside Team Dark, and the three are definitely seen as a package deal, but he doesn't seem that friendly with them, and to be honest, I don't think he ever really was that openly affectionate to Team Dark, but it feels like a sense of camaraderie that these three had has kind of faded away over the years. Funny enough, I think the last time we saw some good old Team Dark action was in episode Shadow of Sonic Forces, when Shadow did seem concerned when Infinite called him, bragging about how he just folded Omega and hit the gritty over his scraps. What was I doing when I wrote this script? So yeah, I too would love to see some more Team Dark action, and I agree, and therefore I don't really have a big counterpoint for this. What I do have a counterpoint for, though, is Argument 2. He should be friendlier to Sonic. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna hit you with a big fat disagree here. I actually think Sonic and Shadow not liking each other is probably better off. I do want to clarify that I don't think Shadow should be a villain, but I think having two characters on the hero side that don't see eye to eye is actually pretty interesting. It's why, despite it sadly not going anywhere, I was intrigued during the Metal Virus arc of IDW when Sonic and Espio got into a genuine argument. I think not all of Team Sonic always agreeing with and getting along with Sonic is interesting, and Shadow is a perfect candidate to play this role. Sonic and Shadow are supposed to be rivals after all, and you can have them be on the same team and still not get along. Hell, this is why Knuckles in Sonic Frontiers was so good. He'd bicker with Sonic constantly during the Ares Island section of the game, and I absolutely loved it. Admittedly, Sonic and Knuckles are more just friends that take the piss out of each other, rather than what I'm suggesting for Sonic and Shadow, which is more of a I respect you, but I don't have to like you kind of deal, but my point still stands. And besides, I'd argue aside from the end of SA2, Sonic and Shadow have still been rivals this whole time. Think about this one legendary interaction from Sonic 06.
Don't be late. Same to you.
That's the thing. Sonic and Shadow are still marketed as rivals, and therefore if they don't have friction with each other, what rivalry even is there here? Sonic and Shadow's different views on what saving the world really means can create some interesting drama, and when they do work together, Shadow is the stoic anchor that pulls Sonic's head out of the clouds, and Sonic is the force of optimism that stomps out Shadow's pessimistic outlook. I think it's a generally interesting dynamic for the two. Anyway, on to... Argument 3. He doesn't get any big character arcs anymore. Now, my point here is kind of a problem that permeates the whole franchise's cast, not just Shadow. The main problem here is that Sonic is a franchise designed for the long haul, to be a big media franchise that will still be around way after you and I have finished our time on this mortal plane. It's not some story with a clear beginning, between, and end, and for this reason, giving character arcs is kinda difficult, because eventually you'll run out of lessons for the characters to learn, and then you'll be in trouble. It's why outside of its own OC characters, IDW doesn't really do character arcs with its storytelling, because it isn't sustainable. Unless you want to reboot your franchise every so often, constant character development isn't gonna work. This is why Sonic himself doesn't really have a character arc either. He's the face of the franchise, and changing him is a big risk, and also makes it harder to justify him being here. Sonic in the games is a character who helps others with their problems, not really solving his own problems. And while the movies and Prime give him character arcs, it's a bit harder to make a static protagonist work in film and TV than it is in gaming. Not impossible, mind you. Goku from Dragon Ball is a prime example of a static protagonist in a TV format, but it's significantly harder, especially for a show like, say, Sonic Prime, where Sonic is one of the few consistent characters to be plot relevant in every episode. It's why the character arcs in Frontiers are so weird as well. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Frontiers' writing in its character arcs, and I think the way they handled them was pretty clever. But Amy's motivation is fairly vague, Knuckles' arc explores a new angle to Knuckles we haven't really seen before, and it was his first real character arc since Sonic 3, and Tails' arc is him recovering from a character regression, which I think is actually a very clever way to spin his portrayal in Forces, by the way. Shadow is stuck in this same deadlock, where giving him a character arc, you also have to take into careful consideration the long-term consequences as far as storytelling goes. So keeping him a bit more static is generally the safer option to ensure this character has more longevity. So ultimately, in conclusion, I think the Shadow we have currently is perfectly fine. He's got the world's best interest in mind, and while he doesn't like Sonic, he does hold some respect for him and is willing to work with him when necessary. And hell, as that last teaser for Sonic Prime Season 3 suggests, maybe he does genuinely care for his well-being. He's not the most social person, not a big party guy, prefers to be alone, and that's fine, so what if he's a little introverted? But he does hold some degree of friendship to some of the cast, notably Rouge, Omega, and even Amy. Also, we need to see this man interact with Sage. Like, I really want to see that interaction, because I think it'd be really interesting. Anyway, my name is Ramen Ronin. I do videos on whatever I particularly feel like that day. Be sure to like, comment on if you agree or disagree with me and why, and subscribe if you enjoyed. Peace.